Hi, my name is Jan Wilczek from WolfSound.com. Welcome to WolfTalk, a podcast about audio programming. In this podcast, you will learn how to build your career in programming or research related to audio, meet programmers and researchers from all around the world, and learn about the intricacies of sound. Hi everyone, and welcome to the 18th episode of the WolfTalk podcast. We're not slowing down, we're not halting on publishing more and more episodes. And today, as usual, I have a very special guest for you, namely Ruurd Adema, a live sound engineer turned audio programmer. He's really an awesome guy, and I'm sure you'll figure this out. We'll talk on his background, on how he taught himself programming and then successfully launched a freelancing audio programming career. So you'll hear a lot of tips on how to learn and how to find new programming gigs. I think his story is really inspiring, and the way he describes it and his passion for audio is really incredible. So you'll not only take a lot of practical advice, but also a lot of inspiration. And for sure, I did as well. So I'm really excited for you to listen to this interview. So I met Ruurd at Audio Developer Conference 2023, and I hope to meet him there in 2024 as well. As usual, all the people, places, and references mentioned in this podcast episode can be found under thewolfsound.com/talk018. Once again, it's thewolfsound.com/talk018. And if you're curious how to become an audio programmer, I have a free resource just for you. It's my audio plugin developer checklist that lists every piece of knowledge that I believe is necessary to become a full-fledged audio programmer. So if you, like Ruurd, would like to transition from a, let's say, live sound engineer career to an audio programmer-based role, then I think this resource is just for you. It's thewolfsound.com/checklist. And now, Ruurd Adema. Hi, Ruurd. Thanks for agreeing on the interview. Could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Ruurd Adema. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm an audio developer. I use JUCE a lot. I go to ATC. I try to build things, and I live here in the middle of the Netherlands somewhere in a rural town with my family, wife, and 3 kids. And yeah, that's about it.
Thanks a lot. And it's great to have you on the podcast. I think people will be able to learn a lot from you, especially when it comes to audio freelancing, audio programming freelancing. So, but before we dive into this, could you please tell the story of how you became interested in audio in the first place?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I mean, the interest was there, obviously, but what also helped was that my dad had this little audio mixer. It had these 5-pin DIN connectors. It was a really weird thing. And then I dismantled it, looked how it worked, tried to find it out, couldn't put it together, so that thing died at some point, I believe. Not really sure. But that was my first interest. I mean, the basic idea of mixing audio signals together is quite interesting. Not even that complex at all, but it is interesting nevertheless. And then I got into musical stuff at the primary school, where we, as I believe in the latest grade, and we call it like group 8. We have to perform a musical, and I was like, I know how to amplify this, so I grabbed some microphones and some speakers and did my best to amplify the musical a little bit. which was quite challenging, of course, because of the lack of gear and knowledge, etc. But it was really fun times, and interestingly enough, the teachers found it really interesting, me doing that, because they didn't have to worry about it anymore. But yeah, there I took a first responsibility of doing some amplification for the musical, which was quite interesting. Later in church, when I still went to church, I was like around the age of 15, I believe, or something. There was like an organization in who worked across all the churches in different places, who recorded meetings and ceremonies, sermons. What's the word? Not sure. It could be anything
mass,
like yeah. It was
I
like
think,
not a Catholic thing, but more on the other side,
so the service, I guess.
Yeah, service stuff or a concert, like in the evening. There would be like volunteers doing nice concert with music and singing and playing and stuff. And this organization recorded those events and distributed them across people who couldn't attend these kinds of meetings or events, which was really nice. But they had like this little van fully packed with microphones and like an audio desk and like a super mini outside broadcast vehicle, basically. That was my introduction to, so you place like this little OBV outside of the building, and you pull some cables to the inside, and you connect some microphones, and then you can record it in a really nice way. We had nice gear. I mean, it was like Neumann microphones and proper gear to work with. So that was a really nice introduction, and I learned a lot about how where do you place microphones and how do things sound if you place a microphone here and the source is there, and how are you going to mix that together. It's all of volunteers, and then it went into a proper post-production as well. And but yeah, that was a really interesting time. At some point, video got added as well. There were some volunteers who it was in the time of like the ESDN connections. Like you had the early internet connections with the 56K modems, which make the noise. But then the step after that was like the high speed internet connections. But that allowed them to start with live streaming to the internet, so live broadcasting, basically. It was really interesting stuff, because that gives like a whole other edge, because you have to do things proper right away because it's all live, and you can't mask things post production, basically. Yeah, I think those were the main things which sparked my interest into audio.
Awesome. And then, since you said that you are 15, then did it push you then to go to some kind of university or a school for live sound engineers? What was your path from there?
No, yeah, my path from there is quite interesting. I started after my so in the Netherlands we have the. I always find it super hard to convert the school names systems to English. We have primary school, then we have secondary school, I guess. Like, and then we had another musical stuff. So I didn't attend any class, but I was always busy with the audio part and preparations of things. But after that, you go to university or like a proper school for learning something. And I went to a course called Media and Entertainment Management, which was basically a lot of obvious things, but then made official from books and stuff. It was quite abstract, quite for management kind of people. I didn't really like it. I tried for 1.5 years, and then I realized I don't like this at all. Then I was like, okay, so I'm going to quit this one, but I need some job. And I started looking for companies in the area which works with audio, basically. And I just entered the door. I walked in and just presented myself like, hey, this is me, this is my case, this is what I want to do. And then they invited me for interview, but at least to get to know each other a little bit. And I dressed up really well, like you always do with a nice suit and stuff. I did back then as well, and they were really impressed.
And it worked. And it worked.
But interestingly enough, I started as a video engineer, and it was a company who did a lot of corporate events. So it's has a lot to do with like big screens, multi-screens, picture-in-picture, animations, and all that kind of stuff. And we did that with basically with hardware, because the whole software stuff wasn't anything useful back then. And then it was basically a really good learning school to learn like everything, like how do you solve problems on site, or how does video work, how does it relate to audio, all kinds of stuff. It was like, we call it like an AV engineer, like for an audio video engineer. It was really, really interesting time. After that time, or I think maybe during that time, I tried to do more technical study. Or study is also not the right word. In Netherlands, it's called study, but it's so what's the name for if you go to school and you take a course or a program? What's the proper?
Just a single subject, you mean? Or
no, not really. Like
a degree?
Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah. So I started working on getting a degree for electrical engineering.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Or no, I started actually as I can't even remember what the thing was called. Something else. Also something for management stuff. I don't know. And then 6 weeks in, I realized again, nope, wrong decision. So I quit that and I switched to electrical engineering. And I found that really hard because of the math, and especially with some like I missed the first part of the education, and it was really, really hard to dive into that and to get up to speed with where they currently are. So I quit that as well, and I went back to the same company after that. I quit and I started freelancing as an audio engineer. And then I got into touch with another company in the Netherlands, more of a support engineer club, where like in the sense that they distribute all kinds of brands like Solid State Logic and VCCom, sound devices and stuff. And then I became a support engineer. So clients who would buy stuff from us, we would support and design systems for live events or whatever. Like it's really, really interesting. One of the interesting aspects of it was that it was right after Solid State Logic released their live sound console, the live audio console, the L500. And I got to train all the top engineers in the Netherlands on this new console. And I found it really interesting to see someone dive behind a completely new console with like a completely new user interface, different ways of working, and then how each engineer tried to solve their problems. Each engineer has their way of doing and the way of solving problems, and they need to find a way. Okay, so how do I solve the problem on this console the way I like to solve it? And I learned a massive amount of interesting things from engineers due to that. I also learned that there was no gold standard or anything. So there were no two engineers who did things the same. They all had different approaches, which I found really interesting. So it also motivated me, and it allowed me to motivate other people. Like you can't do it wrong in audio engineering because there is no good or wrong, because everyone is doing different things anyway. So yeah, I found it really interesting. And after that, let me think. I started freelancing again, and ended up as doing front of house work for musicals and plays. I did some really weird stuff with recording 1,000 channels of audio on a live event, and also did some intercom systems, which is a whole other aspect of live sound in some way.
So by intercom, you mean how the various actors or like how the director can communicate with various actors and various members of the performance?
Yeah, not with the performance, but with the crew. There was like, especially with bigger events, there's the need for crew members to communicate. There's one show caller who calls the shots and who follows the what's it called, like the schedule of the show, and tries to get everyone on the same page, etc. And there's a whole lot of other stuff going on, like motion, for example. If a lift goes up and down, they need to be able to shout something like, yeah, it's clear, so you can go to the next queue, or stop the show if something goes wrong or is unsafe, or there's like the pyrokinetics involved as well. So, and then that could involve like 50 persons who need to be in the same network, and then you would like divide everything into groups, and so that people who needed to talk to each other could reach each other, but no other people. Otherwise, there's way too many communications going on. So yeah.
Okay, and actually, I've seen the show, so the recording of the show where you set up like the 1,000 channels. It was like super impressive. Like it was a huge thing. Like
yes,
what is there like any special term for this kind of event in the Netherlands?
Everyone in the Netherlands knows this event. That's a special term, I guess. It's really something special. It's I think, was it this show that they had like this? The interesting thing about this evening is that there's music for 3 hours non-stop continuously, and then there's like 15 to 20 different bands involved or something like that, and they play 2 or 3 songs on their own, and then they do like 1 or 2 songs with another band or like a group, and then the other group takes over and goes on, and then the next group comes and they do something together, and then so there's 2 stages, at least 2 main stages, 1 big catwalk through the middle, but then they also always come up with surprising stuff. So they float a bar through the whole room. It's like a place where like 17,000 people can go to, and then they hoist this bar through the whole room, and people are like drinking beers on the bar and singing and playing music or whatever. They even had like a stage coming from the roof, so the performance would like prepare on top of in the roof, and then at some point the whole stage would come down and then float over the public, and like you could basically reach the thing. Last year they had a stage where they flipped it like 360 degrees, so the performance were like upside down. They were all strapped together, and super interesting stuff. But because of the complexity, there's like I don't know how many channels. Yeah, I mean there's like 500 channels. There's like 8-9 muddy streams times 56 or 64 channels or whatever. going on, and they have like multiple consoles for front of house, multiple consoles for monitoring, and they all put it in one big giant loop, and they can route audio between every point basically. And the more interesting thing even is that they automate the whole thing. So when they call a snapshot and go to the next scene, the whole routing changes to something else, so that the audio comes from that stage instead of that stage. And it's super complicated stuff, and they are managing that very, very well. But in order to make sure that the audio gets on tape, we can either choose to switch at the right moment between different streams, but that turned out to be quite sensitive to mistakes. If you make a mistake and you switch too late or wrong, then you're going to miss a whole part of the show, which is obviously not the idea. And another aspect of this whole thing is that the post-production happens right away. So while all the bands and artists and performers are still there, the show is like 10 shows or something like 10, 12 shows. So there's sort of like 2 weeks of performing for each performer. And they really want to get the post-production done while all the performers are there, so they can review and agree on the specific mix. And also they stream the live concert within 1 week or something like that in Amsterdam or something. So there's like a high pressure on getting the post-production done within limited amount of time. And for that they built like post-production studios outside of the hall where the music is happening. And then once we've recorded all the audio data, we send the data directly to those post-production units outside. And someone starts to edit the show right away, and he pulls an all-nighter, and then the next morning the mixing engineers come in with a fully prepared session, and they can start right away. And then like a couple of hours after the show, they've managed to reduce those 500 channels to something which they can work with. I'm not sure what the limits of Pro Tools are, but yeah, that's quite interesting stuff. And then I say 1,000 channels because we do everything redundant. So we bring out everything to Ravenna streams and take redundant recordings. Yeah.
I'm just super curious, like, do they manage, or do you manage to do it, without any custom software involved? That's the question.
Yes, it's all without custom software. Yeah, I mean the use case is so small. Every time I work on this project, I so badly want to create a proper solution for this, but then I realize it's once per year that we need this gigantic amount of channels. And I mean the challenge is to keep everything in sync, because if you obviously, we record across multiple recorders, machines. We use just plain computers for this. Actually, we took data center servers because of their reliability. Those machines are basically made to turn on once, and then 50 years later to turn them off and throw them away. So they have like dual power supplies. Everything is dual CPUs, multiple disks and stuff. So we use those. But the challenge is to make sure that streams from machine A are perfectly in sync with streams from machine B. And what's even more important is that they run at equal speed. Otherwise, you get drift between the streams over time, and that gets like a post-production challenge, so to speak. So we use both timecode, LTC stuff to know where we are, and then we properly sync everything to common house clock basically, and we buffer the clock with some chasing mechanisms, and at some point an outside broadcast vehicle will also appear who will want to use this LTC stuff, and we sync the whole thing to the PA system inside the hall. And yeah, it's an interesting case. And oh yes, do I want to create software for this? But yeah, I don't know. The use case seems somewhat limited for once per year.
Yeah, I understand.
Absolutely.
Okay, and apart from this, like, can you maybe share on which live events you worked on, or how did your career then develop from there?
My career developed. I went on to doing musical stuff. So front of house mixing mainly and sound design. I took over from another sound designer who was basically the principal sound designer, and I did all the shows after that. Was a really interesting experience because of the adrenaline rush, basically, because there's like a limited amount of time available to build everything up and to sound check, to studio and to tune the PA systems to your liking, and then making sure all the microphones are working reliable, and then there's like a whole list of things which need to be correct, otherwise the show will get interrupted or there will be other problems. And then at some point it's 8 o'clock, 1 minute before show, and you're sitting there waiting for other crew members to become ready and for the audience to settle. And then you get a cue like, "Hey, Ruurd, can we? Are you ready?" "Yeah, I'm ready." "I hope so. Touch wood." But the adrenaline rush which happens at that very moment is super addictive. It's amazing feeling. And then the first measures, bars, whatever you want to call them, and you feel like, oh, everything is working. Then the tension eases away, and I can start enjoying the play. Yeah, it's really interesting. But it was like a touring thing. So we built the thing up. We did the show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shows, and then we would break it down and move it to another place, and which is a whole challenge in itself because of different room acoustics. Every time different PA systems and lots of variables to take into account and to make sure the whole place sounds somewhat in the same way across different locations and stuff. Yeah, super interesting stuff. Yeah, that was like 2 or 3 shows, and then the pandemic happened, which for me was like a revelation because I finally had time to properly dive into programming, or at least I wanted to do programming for a while at that point, and I spent basically every free hour I had on trying to learn things. And then when the pandemic hit, we built up the set, and there was like a press conference in the Netherlands with the prime minister saying like, yeah, we're going into lockdown, and so we tore the whole set down again, put it inside a van, and drove away. I've never seen the cast after that. It's super weird, basically. But yeah, that was it. So I went home and I was like, okay, so what now? So I looked at my bank account to see how much slack there was, and yeah, that gave me some time to really think through. Okay, so programming, but what do I want to do in programming? Because programming is quite a wide area of expertise. And at some point, I had like a really logical thought of like, yeah, I'm an audio engineer with programming skills, so let's combine those two. And I started at a JUCE community because I was like, there's a whole community around it. Joshua had already started or was about to start. I'm not sure how long he is busy already, but there were like good communities around audio programming. And I started looking for problems I could solve, trying to get to meet people. And some really interesting projects came out of that. Yeah.
Okay, but so before we dive into this, I have a question. So, like, what interested you in programming in the first place? So, why did you start learning programming in the first place?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think I have a clear answer to that. I like to know with certain things how they work, I think. There's also an aspect of programming where you have a lot of power as programmer or someone who creates stuff inside a digital world, which is cheap to get into and has a potential really big outreach in terms of solving a problem. Or, I mean, the world is gigantic when it comes to what you can do on a computer, especially if you don't mind programming. That is one aspect of it. I started programming in C basically, and that's where I really felt comfortable, because I learned it really helped shape my mental model of how memory works, how processing on that memory works, how allocation, deallocation, stack heap, threading, what the deal is with system calls, etc. Pointers, really important topic, of course, which can be quite daunting for new programmers. But I really liked it, and I started building an audio mixer in C, which allowed me to route audio between different audio devices, taking into account that I didn't want to drop a single sample. So I had to take into account the fact that the audio devices on my system are not clock synchronized. So there had to be some kind of synchronization in between to make sure that the thing will run basically indefinitely without dropping a sample. Because that's what I'm used to in from live audio world, is that we never drop a sample. A dropped sample is a big problem, because that can potentially be a really loud sample, or like a really loud change in magnitude. And then with PAs as powerful these days, that can really hurt some people's ears. So yeah, there's like dropping sample is really not done in live sound or broadcast stuff. So that there was a mentality which I took with me when starting this whole endeavor. And with that I learned about thread priorities, clock domains, synchronization, synchronization in terms of between threads, and log-free stuff. And yeah, that was a really interesting subject to dive into. And what motivates me to learn is, I think like one thing I really like is learning. That's basically the theme of my whole life. I like to learn, and the programming world and software land is a super good place for that, because there's so much to learn, and learning is even part of being a developer. So yeah, I think that comes closest to what I think motivates me to put through with all the all the challenges.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and what you said about learning is for me is true as well. And especially I think nowadays it's very pleasant, because there's just so many materials out there to be able to learn programming in general. And even if you come from a completely different background, I think it's quite easy then to just sit down and start with some tutorial, and in a few minutes you can get quite an impressive results with all the frameworks you have available, like JUCE as an example, that you can just sit down and have a working gain plugin, in 30 minutes, for example.
Yeah.
That was not possible, I think, before these frameworks like JUCE or iPlug 2 then appeared. So I totally
in 30
understand.
minutes with or without race conditions?
Yeah, I think with race conditions it's 30 minutes, and without race conditions it's like 30 years.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
What was your first encounter with programming? Or
oh yeah, so actually, believe it or not, I was in high school, and we got like this Pascal programming language classes. which is, if you think about it, it's really nasty because it requires you to type a lot of code just to get something done, and it's quite restrictive. But the thing is that I was a really good student, but I really sucked at programming at first. And this was because we started learning programming when I was busy with other stuff. So I basically had no time, to just do the homework. But then when I went to the university and we started learning, C++ at the basic level, and I think MATLAB as well in the first semester, it turned out that, this little of programming that I had, it was already enough to be quite good, at my among my peers, so to say. And I just quickly, and then I had the time to study, so I did, the homework and all the assignments, and I found it super, super rewarding. The fact that you can compile the program, run it, and it just prints those asterisks, as a Christmas tree.
Oh yeah,
It's super super rewarding. And then the next step was okay, like I'm because I was studying audio engineering, and probably with an idea to become a mixing engineer one day. But then I was okay. I'm doing an audio course, so let's do something with audio. And so I was okay. Like, how do I write my own synthesizer? And then I started diving into this direction, and like in the first year I was able to create like very very ugly in terms of code quality sound synthesizer, but it worked and it could play out different waveforms. And so and at this point I was sold. I was I want to do this a lot, so to say.
Yeah.
So that was the initial thing, and I always find it funny that I was really bad at it at first, but then I really really loved it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you were bad at C++.
I was bad at Pascal.
At Pascal,
but then with C++, like it's all somehow felt logical to me, and I also liked because in C++, I mean, for programmers it's obvious, but in C++, in Pascal you need to write either function if you return something, or procedure if you don't return something.
Oh.
But in C++, you can use void, right? So a function that returns void, it returns nothing. I mean, it's clear because every programming language now, has this concept of void. But back then, in Pascal, it wasn't the case.
Right.
Yeah, so it was a bit of programming history. I'm sure then, like, no one is using Pascal anymore, even at high schools now.
I hope so.
So, and while we are at this topic of learning programming, you're, I think, a great example of a self-taught programmer. So is there an advice you could give people who, like you, don't have this background in programming, but I would like to start in it? For example, I can especially think about, sound engineers and musicians.
Yeah, in terms of it depends a little bit on the direction or the phase you have in mind. Do you have in mind more the people who wanted to start programming with no background in programming, or is it more people who want to start freelancing or building their own products?
Okay. So these are actually two very good questions. But let's start with the first one. So how to start programming when you have no background in programming or even engineering?
Yeah. I think one of the most important things, and this is a super boring answer, is you have to love it. Because if you don't love it or like it, if you don't find it interesting, then you won't put through with the roadblocks you're going to encounter. There's so much unknown, and you will run into so many problems. You really have to. You need to have this interest, this natural interest of, okay, so this is not working. What am I going to do now? Am I going to ditch the project and watch a Netflix movie, or am I getting extra curious of this, and do I want to dive in? And the sad part of this is you can't reverse it. I mean, you can't decide to like something. Maybe if you don't know you like something, it's always good to try different things and to find the things which interest you most and which you feel naturally attracted towards too. But I mean, there's so many times in programming that I'm like hair pulling experiences of why the bleep is this not working. And then, but yeah, it's a new challenge to dive in and to learn something.
I think especially you need to be persistent if you're starting out in C. That's for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend people to start with C. For me, that worked really well because of the raw nature of things. At least I feel very close to the metal when writing C. C++ also to some extent, but in C++ you can get quite distracted by abstractions which C++ offers, but which don't necessarily translate directly to what's happening under the hood. And the beauty of C is it's a super simple language. There's only a couple of constructs and you can create anything you want, basically. If you want to go a level deeper and go full assembly, that even more applies. But be my guest, I didn't do that. I can't read or write assembly. I don't intend to go into that level. If you're more like, I just want to find out about the logic of programming, then a higher level language definitely makes sense. Something like Python, although Python has quirks as well. I actually think that Swift is a really good language for people to start because they focused on especially the people who are starting out and need to learn the new language. So the facilities to really quickly put something together are like really well done. And Chris Ledner, the creator of Swift, also has a really clear vision on that. And it goes basically like something like we need to make it as easy as possible for people to dive into this programming language. But that gives us an opportunity to take advantage of that. They have this concept called playgrounds. So you open like a sheet and you start typing Swift and you hit play and you have programmed your first Swift code. Good luck trying that with C or C++ or anything other than invoking the compiler and running a.out. But yeah.
Swift, okay, and these playgrounds, they are locally on your machine, or you mean in the web?
No, it's all local on your code.
Yeah, so it's
had or has. I'm not even sure if they still exist, but at some point I did create a Swift application for, I believe it was an iOS app. Oh, that was in the time after the pandemic hit. So when I went home from my musical, I was like, okay, so where do I start? And I started programming an iOS app because that's cool. And then I dived into Swift, and I really got to appreciate Swift in the consistency, the ease of use, and the constructs you can use. And at a later point, Swift UI came along, which is a really nice way of describing your user interface. But I found it really, really interesting. These days, it's not that relevant to me, at least because of the non cross-platform nature of it. It's really an Apple thing. It is not. Swift is also available for Linux and Windows, but a programming language in itself is not worth that much without community and library ecosystem for different platforms. So I don't consider Swift really that being that cross-platform.
Okay. But I think to sum it up, it's a really, really concrete advice, especially that you really need to love the thing that you're doing. So thank you for it. So once you decided that you want to pursue this audio programming lane, then you said that you went to JUCE forums to find like the first customers. So could you tell maybe the story of what were your beginnings, and maybe then on which products did you manage to work on, and how did you approach them?
Yeah, so there were a couple of leads in the first year. It was quite a busy year actually. I reached out to people asking on the forum for programmers for a certain problem, and that could be sometimes like 1 or 2 sentences without any explanation or whatsoever. But I was like, okay, so this sounds to be in my area of interest, so let's reach out and see what they need. The first thing I wanted, and what the first thing I did was ask them to meet like virtually, of course, because we were in a pandemic. And then I really wanted to try to understand their problem first, because before I wanted to offer my services, because I want to know whether my services are of any use. And I think I'm the most capable of assessing whether my services apply to this problem instead of the interviewer. And that's how I reached out. Like, hey, I saw you're having this problem. Maybe you want to set up a video call so we can discuss. I would really like to learn more about the specific details of the project, and based on that, maybe I can be of any help. And if not, that's also not a problem. And then quite a few people reacted to that, and we hopped on a call, and we started diving into this problem right away. And I asked them questions, and apparently those were the right questions, because people felt like, they were being understood because of how I asked the questions and what the questions I asked. It really helped me understand the problem exactly into the details, like what is the context, what are the requirements, what are the expectations. It really helped them to gain trust that I'm able to bring something to the table, or not, but that's also fine. And in the end, 5 of them said yes, please. So there I was as a rookie programmer with 5 projects, and the same amount of time everyone else has. So that was a really busy year. It started with an actually quite challenging project for a speaker manufacturer who wanted to deploy a remote control plugin to the Avid live consoles. So I had to dive into JUCE and manipulate JUCE to be able to support the AEX DSP stuff. And I dived right into the TI composer, the TI. God, I can't even remember the name. It's such a painful experience. Luckily, I didn't have to write any DSP. I only had to write like a pass-through algorithm, and I can do that. Like copying some buffers is I can do that. And then I had to go through the whole tool chain of the Texas Instruments stuff. And luckily, the technology from Avid is really well documented and really consistent and on a good level. So I basically took the implementation, the AX implementation from JUCE, and made a fork of that specific module and adapted it so it could run on the DSP version of the AX. That was quite challenging, but it worked out at the end, and they were happy. Actually, I got that lead from one of my previous colleagues from the live sound world. He is a guy who goes across the world and does system design and tuning for all the big acts like Ed Sheeran and that those kind of like the very biggest events or rooms. He does those, and he's also into the product side of things for some of their hardware products. And it was just a message like, hey, how are you doing? And doing fine. And you get to speak a bit and to chat a bit, and then what are you doing? Yeah, I do programming, plugins and stuff. And can you do AEX? I've never done it before, so I think I can do it. So what you got? And then he came with this project, and I underestimated badly, of course, how much effort it would be and whatever. But it was fun anyway. A good deep dive into plugin lands, basically. Yeah. Another one was a really interesting one. They had built like a little 3D printed saxophone, which you could bring along on public transport or whatever, and then they had an accompanying mobile application who did the actual synthesis of the signal. So it was basically a MIDI controller, and the synthesis was done on the mobile devices. Really interesting project. Was not completely my take, my side of things. There was like a React Native project, I think, and there were some things involved where I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to continue with this project, because I don't really like it. I get frustrated all the time. My expertise is not here, so I think for you guys it would be better to find someone else on to continue this work, because my contribution is not that valuable in that sense.
But at the same time, probably your background as an audio engineer helped a lot, right? Because, as you said, you were able to ask the right questions, but you also deeply understood the infrastructure. So now that you were a programmer, you knew how to build the tools that you had been previously using, and you were also understanding the pain points of people coming to you with their questions, with their problems.
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing about sound engineering, and especially live sound engineering, is that the context and the limitations of the work we do require somewhat different things from software and hardware, in the sense that one, there is not much time to figure out things. By the way, we never miss a deadline in live sound. In my 15 years of doing things, I've never missed a single deadline. I mean, 8 p.m. the show starts, whether we like it or not. So that's really interesting. I've even had like a corporate event where they came with the PowerPoint presentation less than a minute before we had to start, and then we have to load them up into Windows machines and then PowerPoint, which is super scary stuff if you're under such time pressure. But it worked out nevertheless. But I mean, in live sound, there's not much time. You have a really well-defined window of opportunity, and there's not much time to try to understand software. We also work in dark environments, non-optimal in the sense that it's a little screen on your side. So buttons have to be a little bit bigger. It also has to be very, very clear whether a button is engaged or not. There's no opportunity or room for asking the question, is that button on or off? So the user interface has to be very, very clear about that. So user interfaces in these kinds of environments tend to be quite contrast heavy, like full red, full green or whatever, just to indicate what is going on. And it's an interesting thing. And then the other part of it is software can't fail. I mean, if your software fails and it crashes or whatever, then that's a potential showstop. So to people who program audio software for live sound, I tell them like, what's a security vulnerability for Microsoft is a potential showstopper for a live sound engineer. Because if you corrupt your state with some data arrays or unsynchronized access or whatever, that could mean that something else in your memory will get corrupted, or you get a bad access crash, whatever. That's a potential showstopper. If you learn about how things are connected together in live events, that's quite scary. Anyway, if you consider the amount of single point of failures, and things are getting better, luckily, but it makes thinking about reliability much more important, basically. I mean, crashing a door is never good. Don't let's be very clear about that. But crashing a live sound system is even worse. To potential showstopper, and you have to say to 20,000 people, yeah, sorry, the thing crashed. We can't get it up and running, so please go home. A lot of people don't like that.
Yeah,
so
around
the impact
20,000
tends to be
people,
a little bit bigger. And then with the whole transition from analog to digital, where we transfer like potentially even hundreds of channels over a single fiber or copper connection. If that connection fails, then it's all the 100 channels who are at risk. While in audio land, it's mostly like 1 or 2 channels which might start to hum or which might lose signal. So the impact is much less than in the modern digital world. It's interesting stuff.
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
where were we? I don't even know. Oh, yeah, about the projects. Yeah. There are some other projects as well. But
okay, so you want to mention some specific ones?
Yeah, I already mentioned two projects. Another one is involves reverse engineering AirPlay a little bit. It's a plugin which allows you to receive audio from your mobile device directly into your DAW. But yeah, that stuff is just non-documented, and I had to dive in a little bit to find out how that stuff worked and make it work. But yeah, that also worked out. So yeah, those were 5 projects. There was another one, 5 projects in the first year. It was a really good deep dive into working together with other people and do code reviews and learn how that works and learning about continuous integration setups and releases and QA and stuff. And it was a good first year. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. And so because you seem to have a very good experience in this, and I think everyone who's starting out asks this question ad nauseum, could you answer it yourself? Namely, how do you find new gigs as a freelance audio programmer?
Yeah, I think looking around on the JUCE forum really helps. There's regularly people asking for engineers who can help on a specific problem. I also got into contact with one person on Reddit, but there's not much happening there. And other than that, I think looking for the community around audio development. So if you're able to attend ADC in one way or another, or to go into the Discords which are available, and just chatting with people, learning about it. If you want, that is really for starting out as a fresh. It also really depends a little bit on where your expertise is. So if you're really starting out, then I think I would recommend trying to find a job somewhere, because that allows you to learn about good practices and to have people around who you can ask when you're stuck, or if you want to have someone review your code or solution or whatever. If you want to go freelancing, then I think it really helps to become an expert on some subjects and to really dive into that and get all the know-how there is and expertise. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. There's not really a job board. Also posting on LinkedIn or telling on LinkedIn that you're a JUCE, that you know JUCE and C++ and audio programming also helps, because there's regularly recruiters coming my way because of those skill sets. And other than that, I'm not really sure. Yeah, try to reach out to people as much as you can, and having try to have an interesting conversation, or just be interested in other people, other companies, or yeah.
Nice. I think that's a very concrete advice that people can appreciate. Of course, there's no hard and fast rule how to do it, but I think that's already very helpful, just simply through learning how other people had done it. But you're not.
I think the gist of it. Sorry to interrupt. I think the gist of it is to how should I say this? To reach out to people and try to get into contact with people.
Okay. That's definitely something that worked in your case as well, but I cannot imagine it not working in general. So what I wanted to say is that you're not only freelancing, but you also have you're also working on your own products. For example, I know that you publish Mix to Mobile, which I think is really cool. And could you explain what was the idea behind it? How did the development process go? And also, I'm super curious, how did you market this?
Yeah,
so let's start with the idea.
With the idea. The idea came from my time as a live sound engineer, where another sound designer reached out or mentioned something over a beer, because he was looking for a solution to stream audio to 20 Android smartphones or something like that. And the solutions out there were not low latency enough, so there was too much latency involved. The streaming over Wi-Fi is always a balance between reliability and dropouts versus latency. The higher the latency, the more stable you can stream. But for some live application, you just need the lower latency, and he couldn't find one. And I mentioned casually, like, I don't know, I would just start with shooting some UDP packets towards those devices, and off you go. Whereas he was like, okay, sounds good. So, and that is one aspect of so then I started to own this problem, because I kind of had promised him to dive into this, not knowing what kind of challenge that would be. But I think that's a good trait for an engineer in general, to own a problem and to finish it. If you're able to show that to potential employers or clients, they generally are very happy about that kind of approach. But then I started diving into the world of Android, because I needed to receive some UDP audio streams. I used my previous audio mixer application, which I used for learning C. Interestingly enough, it was so bad that I really couldn't find out why my release build wasn't working, but my debug build was. And then later I learned that if you assert things, they get compiled away in release, but not in debug. So there was like half my code was had asserts around it, just as a way of avoiding error handling. But then in release, half of my code was stripped away basically, and it wouldn't work. So I just compiled in debug, and off we went, and it worked fine. And I created some little receiver application for the Androids with Java GNI, which was a whole other story. But in the end, I was able to receive and broadcast the audio from a Mac to 20 smartphones within reasonable latency. I think something like 150 milliseconds or something like that. And they used it for a year and a half for an art project where people would get and receive this Android phone as part of the experience. Super fun. So I always thought okay, so this is interesting. At some point, I really want to translate this into a real product so that people can buy it and use it. And then it's interesting, because that's the moment where you start realizing how big of a gap there is between making something work and making something a proper piece of software. That turns out to be a huge amount of work. In the meanwhile, I found these new projects we discussed, so I hadn't that much time to work on this, but I still had it in mind. When I worked for another project, I learned that the people were actually requesting this functionality. And then at some point, I decided to dive into this. I ditched the whole work I previously had, the C audio engine thing and the Android app, and I switched to JUCE. Then I got into a really big paralysis analysis problem, which is a term to describe a problem where there's like a bunch of multiple solutions to a problem, and you can't decide. And at some point, like researching is really important and valuable, but at some point, there's nothing more to research. And the only way to make a decision is to dive in and to try it out. I generally don't have much patience for that because that takes more effort, more time. And in this case, it was eating me alive. So I just asked another programmer who I highly regard in regards to networking code stuff to wire up some code for transporting the audio streams between devices. And that helped me to eliminate the paralysis analysis on that on that side of things. Then the next thing was like, okay, so how's the user interface going to look like? I'm really one of those guys coming from WolfSound where I'm like, things need to be really uncomplicated. So I want to make it as simple as possible. And in the case of Mixed and Mobile, I think I succeeded with that because it's literally 2-3 clicks. You instantiate a plugin, you open the app, and you hit start playing on the discovered stream. So there's no links or IP addresses or whatever. It's super straightforward, super simple, super quick. It makes it an ideal tool to have with you and use it a couple of times per day just to reference check your mix or whatever. And then I got into selling the thing. So you get into notarization stuff and signing and jumping through Apple hoops. I needed to have some multicast permissions because of the discovery mechanism, which requires separate device profiles and you have to ask Apple if I may use these multicast permissions, and they grant it to you and stuff. The whole notarization stuff. Then the app has to go into the App Store, of course, because people need to download the app. So that's a whole another story. But in the end, that worked out quite well. They need to see like a demo video of what your app is doing because they can't they won't instantiate Logic with a plugin to try out the app. So the alternative is to video it and to send that over. Later, I published to the Google Play Store, which is similar, less strict, a bit more easy, I think. But yeah, that worked out, and people started to buy the plugin. To my surprise, I mean, it's super scary to release your first product. It's super easy to think, but I need to polish this little feature because I'm not fully happy with it. So instead of creating a sales page as a programmer, I tend to go into refactoring something which does not add any value at all because the previous solution was working fine. But at some point, I was like, but I just have to release, otherwise there's no point in making this stuff. I really like making stuff for people to use and to help people with the workflow or in whatever ways possible. But software isn't meant to do nothing.
That's true. But the beautiful thing with software and the internet nowadays is that you can always update it. So that's why I love digital content. You can always bump the version and go further. I know there are extra maybe complexities which are involved, but it's not like, you outsource the manufacturing, you create 100,000 units and then it turns out that they all can go to trash because there was some bug or something's not working. So software in this regard is super nice and flexible.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Which brings me to lessons learned. Always archive the debug symbols before releasing.
Okay.
Because the software will crash, at least in my case. The challenge with mixed mobile is that there's a lot more environment variables which influence the performance and behavior of the application. So first of all, there's networking involved. Discovery. Some networks block discovery of multicast stuff. Sometimes Wi-Fi networks are not that performant and the audio stream will drop out. Sometimes an audio, like an Ethernet connector or Ethernet adapter, will disappear. Your software has to update a state after that. So there's a lot of moving parts around this particular application, which makes it quite challenging to make it bug free. And I definitely wouldn't recommend such a project for new programmers to dive into this. Just stick with your normal gain plugin or whatever, because the environment is much more isolated. I mean, true, you have the differences of how DAWs call your plugin, because there's not really an official contract for that. But other than that, it's like audio in, audio out, and some parameters, coefficients, which you adjust according to the user's needs. And that's it. I mean, there's enough challenges with thread synchronization and data race stuff. But yeah, in that sense, mixed mobile is quite challenging. And then things will crash, and then you get some weird numbers from an Avid crash log thing, and then you're like, I don't know. So in hindsight, I should have started that right away. But I after that started happening, there were some crashes, not many, but on some systems, especially with Avid hardware or something, there were some specific configurations which ended up badly for mixed mobile. And I've now also added a diagnostics button, so people can hit the diagnostics button and it will generate a zip file, which they can wire over, which gives me insight into what happens, proper logging inside of it, and device state, etc. Yeah.
Nice. So it's I think it's a super interesting thing, and I have a question maybe related to it, but that's in a little bit, because one thing is that I wanted to ask is that you mentioned Audio Developer Conference. And could you maybe tell the story of how you discovered the conference, and to which ones did you go, and what is your impression of this event in general?
Yeah, when I was, I'm not sure. Yeah, I went to the ADC. The first time was, I think, in the pandemic, actually. UK was one of the first countries to open up borders. And allow other people to come over. There was no distance rules, I believe. But that was, I think, the first conference. But at some point, my wife can be a really good point of reflection sometimes. Where I was talking about this conference, and she was like, "But that sounds exactly like the conference in your area of expertise and stuff." Yeah. Why don't you go there then? Yeah, that's a good question. Let's go. And then I found a really, really nice and welcoming community of audio programmers who are really curious into, creating all kinds of musical instruments, digital musical instruments and synthesizers and audio processing or whatever. I mean, the full variety of things, MIDI controllers and stuff. And I really like the scale of it. It's compared to other big conferences, the scale is quite limited, I think. But it really is. It makes it less daunting, I think, and it allows you to get to know people really, and to run in them into them next year again and catch up. But yeah, that is the main thing for me is ADC is all about meeting people and sharing ideas, hearing about new technologies, innovations. Yeah.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and it's an incredibly welcoming community, and it's so easy to just start a conversation with someone, which is always very interesting and can create a possibly long-lasting, relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
I mean,
I really like
the fact that there is a chance on the Monday evening to run into another audio developer in a pub is once per year higher than 0.0001%. I mean, that's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
You can basically walk up to someone and be pretty sure that it's the same area of interest. Yeah, that makes it really easy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and obviously you can learn a ton. That's
yes. The talks are great. Yeah. You have given a talk. How was that?
You did not attend?
No. I believe I have such a bad excuse, and I'm really talking about my user interfaces. We have this app, the schedule app, and it didn't switch back to the UK time zone for some reason. So the whole iOS environment switched correctly to the new time zone, but the schedule app didn't.
Okay. You can always watch it in hindsight. I think
yes.
recordings available, but I know it's super hard to get to them after the conference because it's hard to find the time for it. But yeah, like the talks. So I did 2 talks this year and last year, and they both went really well. In the sense that even if there were some negative impressions, people were polite enough not to voice them. But yeah, in all seriousness, people were quite interested, and I received some positive feedback afterwards. So I'm very happy, and I think it's something that we can relate to what you said about this live event, right? Because your talk is at a specific time, you need to show up, you need to be prepared, and then you get this adrenaline rush. And I personally hate when I'm watching a talk and someone is like, yeah, I had it in the slides, but I cannot find it right now, or excuse me, I'm not prepared. Yeah, as a listener, I don't care. So as a speaker, these are the things I always want to address, so that people know they get valuable information and delivered in the right order.
Yeah, thank you for that. That makes it so much more pleasant to listen to. For sure.
Yeah.
Do you learn yourself a lot by giving the talks? I mean, sometimes people say like the best way to learn is to teach.
That's such a good question. So I learn a ton by running the YouTube channel and writing the articles, especially there, because I feel like it, again, as a reader, it would be super annoying that you're reading a tutorial, you follow step by step, but then it doesn't work. And there I really try to, be very precise what to do and which steps to follow to achieve a certain goal, and to go, like mention, every detail that's necessary. And on the flip side, there's just so much untrue information about digital signal processing floating around the internet.
Oh, really?
And then I say, okay, like I really want to be like a trustworthy person in the sense that when I write something, I want to believe that it is correct. And when people can find it, they can reference it, like a scientific publication, basically. And it's not just, another blog that just, throwing stuff out there and wishing it to stick. Maybe it's something I should do. Then maybe I would put out a lot more content, but that I simply wouldn't feel comfortable with it. like mistakes can happen, but there are different kinds of mistakes, and especially when I write something, I take care to reference the sources. And now, when it comes to the ADC talks, there I must say, I mean, I learned a little bit, but these were mostly both of these talks were mostly based on my previous experience. So I was mostly just documenting what I had done previously, and because there I felt this is a kind of experience worth sharing with the community. It's not something that had not been done before, but it's not in the way that I'm, just rephrasing information that's available out there. So these were things that were coming mostly from my experience. So I was just mostly revising what I had previously already in one form or another ready. So that was the answer to your question.
And what kind of feedback give people, or what kind of questions do people give after the talk?
So to be specific, this year I gave a talk about how to write bug-free audio code. So it's something that is close to your heart, and people they tended to give me like a general feedback, like general positive feedback. So yeah, it was a nice talk, and I learned something. I'll try this and this of the techniques you mentioned, and also when the people were asking questions, then they were asking about particular libraries for audio testing. Are they out there? Which is possibly a good idea for a talks next year, or maybe for you, something to work on. And people were also asking, because I was there presenting an approach that uses also Python to test C++ code, especially DSP C++ code, and people were asking, okay, maybe would it be feasible to do this the same with the Julia programming language, and these kind of questions. So yeah, that's the thing that I can remember. I think there were other questions as well, but they just don't come to my mind at this moment.
Have you considered whether Mojo could be an interesting programming language for the audio community?
I'm not sure if I know this programming language.
Mojo is created for the neural networks, for the machine learning world.
Okay. So this is the Python-like language that's
the superset of Python.
That's specifically optimized for neural networks. Okay.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about it,
okay,
as far as I understand, my knowledge is absolutely not into this direction. So I could be completely wrong here. But what if I understand correctly, what Mojo does is it optimizes the code for a specific target platform instead of where you normally would use like some intermediate representation, like the Clang stuff. Mojo seems to be able to know at which platform it's going to run and optimize for that specifically. So they claim even better performance than C++, for example. And since they require this level of control, detailed control over CPU execution, memory locations and stuff, I'm still wondering, maybe it's an interesting language for the audio programmers to dive into. I don't know. I've never heard of anyone talking about this in our community or anything, but crossed my mind.
Yeah, that's an idea for a talk next year. But I think it also boils down to the real-time guarantees, right? So I guess everything you call from the language needs to declare whether it's real-time safe or not. And with Python, it was typically problematic. And I think...
Yeah, Python. With Python, it's problematic, but the Mojo language, as I understand, would give you control over allocations and system calls, at least to that level. But anyway, just a separate thought here.
As you said, there's so much to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. We talked about your freelancing projects. We talked about your products that you're developing. We talked about Audio Developer Conference. Then could you tell us right now at the switch of 2023 to 2024, what are your plans for the nearest future?
What are my plans for the nearest future? The direct plans are to learn and to get some more marketing going for Mix to Mobile. I'm also about to release a separate application which can be used by audio professionals in the live sound for remote listening to their audio channels. It's an iPad app which allows you to give avatars to the channels and then select which one you want to listen to, and it remote controls an audio matrix. And aside from that, I don't have really specific goals. I mean, we all want to create a DAW, of course. At least I want to create a DAW, but I attended a talk from Dave who highly suggested to not do that because it's complicated.
But look how much you can learn, right?
Yeah, exactly. That is the interesting point. So I am always trying to find the right balance between what do I want to do and what is like the most interesting thing to do, and what thing moves the needle for me as a freelancer or for my publishing side of things. And those things don't always align in the sense that sometimes it's easier to just take a well-known language like C++ instead of wanting to dive into Rust, for example, because that will take another year of getting up to speed, basically. But yeah, it's always a challenge. I think the balance between those is it feels nice, at least. Feeling productive, but also curious and being able to dive into new technologies, new stuff. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's super nice. So when we talk about the technologies, then could you tell us a little bit on how you organize your work and what is your current tech stack? So what's the platform you're developing on? What's your IDE? Which languages do you use? And libraries and frameworks?
Yeah, so I'm a Mac user. Sorry about that, I guess. No. I think Mac is a really good platform. Has its quirks, especially when updating. But for me, it feels very nice to work in. I also enjoyed working on Linux a lot. Like the audio mixer I described, I initially built on Linux, and in the end, I do appreciate Linux more as an operating system for a developer because it's super consistent, super clear, super everything, and it's open source. So there's less surprises than when using macOS, which seems to be moving a bit faster, but also breaking things a bit quicker. And then I use Sea Lion, which has been a lifesaver. I really care about the formatting of my code, but I don't want to spend any mental energy on it. So I use Clang Format, the auto format thing utility. I also use Clang Tidy, so just to give me as many warnings as I possibly can to ensure to avoid the C++ foot guns, basically. A year ago, I switched to VZ Package as a package manager using CMake, etc., and that has been a really good switch. I'm super happy with that. I use the new formatting library for formatting strings. I believe it's now in C++ 20 or 23, I think. Then there's SPD log for logging facilities. There's all kinds of libraries available on Visa package. So it's amazing how it works. It works really, really well. And that's my main IDE setup. I use a bit of Copilot, which sometimes is really helpful and sometimes super annoying. But in some cases, I do find it interesting. Like sometimes it hallucinates. It comes up with things which are not there. But then to me, it often is really inspiring. Like, oh, that's actually quite good function name. I should rename this to that. That makes so much more sense. And
okay, so like semantically, then nice.
Yeah. I always try to document things, even for me as a single solo developer, because I've run into too many cases where I'm like, after 6 weeks, like, what is this supposed to do, and what does it do? And I don't understand any of it. So in that sense, JUCE has helped me learn to program really well, because the way JUCE is written is really different from how vanilla C++ is written, or like, there's not really a golden standard in C++ land, but JUCE is in some way like a sub-language of C++. But the way they name functions and how they organize things and how they decouple things with listeners and stuff has really helped me become a good programmer. And I can definitely recommend for new people to look into the JUCE source code, because it's super high quality and super well written. It almost feels like a higher level language inside C++ in some way. I mean, if you need to truncate some part of a string or find a substring, good luck in the standard library of C++. But in JUCE, it's just a simple function call. So my code looks a lot like how JUCE is written.
Okay, nice. Because so I thought the same thing, that you can always argue about the quality or the architecture of JUCE, but the thing is that if you go into this code, you read the source code, you understand what is happening at every level, and that's amazing. That's simply amazing, and it's not easy
really
achievable.
Good job on that.
Yeah. So I wholeheartedly agree.
And then there's the thread sanitizers, the address sanitizers. So I tend to run with these as well, as at least before release, and most of the time things come up. I know enough of C++ to know that I don't know C++, basically. So I try to avoid as many problems or potential traps I can fall into.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing. And hey, if we have the tools, right, why not use them and to our advantage?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of setting up, or I even meet people nowadays who never heard of CMake, or that I'm like, but how do you? That's also my ignorance. Like, but how do you build without CMake? But then it's like just a plain IDE project, Xcode or Visual Studio, or whatever. But these days I wouldn't want to have anything else. Ninja really helps speeding up the compilation time. And with CMake, it's a breeze. CMake in itself is not that great, but yeah, it really does the job. It's super stable. So.
Okay. Nice. And still keeping with your workflow, there's a question I really like to ask every audio programmer out there. Then, do you listen to music while programming?
No, not at all. I find it really distracting.
Okay.
I listen to sometimes when I really wanted to go into focus mode, I put on some noise generator and turn on my turn it on my AirPods, like really low, but just to have some noise floor, and that really helps getting me into the focus zone, basically. Yeah.
Awesome.
There's a really good utility on macOS called Audio Test, which has a really high quality, nice sounding noise generator. And then, how different can a noise generator be? But this one really sounds good.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, Ruurd, thanks a lot for this interview. Thanks a lot for this conversation, for sharing all your experience.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was my pleasure. It was also a pleasure to talk to you during the Audio Developers Conference 2023. And exactly, if someone wanted to contact you, someone from the audience, where would you recommend they go?
Just go to soundondigital.com and hit me a support message. I'm the one handling the support. I am the support department. And I try to answer as quickly as possible, because I think the most important thing for a software publisher is to be as close as possible to the users. So, you'll definitely find me there. And otherwise, LinkedIn is a possibility as well.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And I wish you all the best and good luck in all your professional endeavors.
Thank you. You too.
All right, everyone. That was Ruurd Adema. Thanks, Ruurd, for agreeing on this interview. As usual, all people, places, and references mentioned in this podcast episode can be found under thewolfsound.com/talk018. Once again, it's thewolfsound.com/talk018. Don't forget about your free audio plugin developer checklist under thewolfsound.com/checklist. And if you'd like to support the podcast, please consider hitting the thumbs up on YouTube, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next one. Take care.